Hey, I wanted to mention right off the top of this segment of the program, if I could. I mentioned in the last hour, and I saw it online a few days ago. A survey was out that says that people out there who'd like to see a return to what the Democratic Party and a lot of the media refer to as the assault weapons ban, because assault weapon doesn't really have any. A rock is an assault weapon if you're beating someone over the head with it. But they'd like to see a return, obviously, to this. The law expired, oh golly, a dozen years ago or so, but public support for a return to it is now at an all time low. And I'm reminded of a video a few weeks ago I saw from Steven Crowder where he put firearms out on the table and he asked people stopping by which were the dangerous ones and which were the safe ones. The wooden stocks, everyone said, oh, that's safe. Anything that had a painted or a metal stock, they said that's dangerous, which tells you they're not really too up to speed on all of this. Got a couple of guests in studio who know much more about how all of those things work than I do. Forrest Anderson from Washington Street Pawn and Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense joining us this Friday morning. And first of all, guys, when you hear something like that about that poll, it's got to be a little gratifying to see people are finally getting the message, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think that that's a big trend right now. Everybody, the politicians and the gun grabbers, I guess you could call them, for some reason they want to ban AR-15s, AK-47s. But when you do statistics, those are some of the safest weapons out there. They're used in fewer crimes. They're they're more expensive. Guys that I was talking to a police officer from Chicago the other day, and he was telling me, he says, we were talking about guns, and he says, I hate high points. And I said, why? Because they don't work good. He says, no, because that's what all the thugs use. Because they're cheap. If
Mm-hmm.
they're $150 and under, that's what those guys are buying. Because nobody's going to go spend $1,000 on a gun and then use it in a crime and lose it. Um, and the funny thing is the price on those weapons hasn't gone up. Everybody's fearing a big run on those. I ordered three in for different customers yesterday. You buy a brand new Bushmaster AR-15 for $605 out the door. I mean, there's just some really good buys out there right now on those, and but those are the ones that people worry about. And the debate went back to someone chimed in and they're like, well, you guys are only supposed to have muskets anyway because that's what the Second Amendment was written for. And I'm like, nowhere in there. I said, at the time, the people had just as sophisticated weaponry as the government had. You know, if they would have, so it wasn't written to keep people back in the Stone Age of firearms. At the time it was written, people were carrying probably better weapons than a lot of the government troops
Oh,
use,
right. And
because
a lot
they
of times the troops had to bring their own.
exactly. And so the weapons that we have, people now don't have the same weapons the government has, and a semi-automatic AR-15 is a 22 caliber rifle that has an effective range, out to about 450 meters. Um, so that's that you're not going to go win a war carrying an AR-15. But people are all worried about that gun, even though it's not used in crimes. It's not, it's been used by a couple of the people who've done mass shootings. But honestly, when you stack up the statistics, it's way down the list of weapons used.
I was in a gun shop one time, and the owner told me he showed me one of these pistols he was selling. It was $168, and he said to me, he said, "How shall I put this?" He said, "This is for my urban customers." And in other words, it's cheap, it's inexpensive. Um, Todd, though, I would imagine you when you're out there training someone on a range too, if they have one of those cheaper firearms, if they don't keep it cleaned, it's not going to last long.
Well, and just like it is with any firearm, you got to care for them. You got to keep them clean so they run. I like to pride myself in my class. I know not everyone's going to be able to show up with an $800 SIG. I understand that. So I tell
We'd
everyone,
like to.
yeah, oh yeah, wouldn't we all? I like to tell everyone, bring what you have. Bring what you have, and if that's a 9-shot 22 revolver, it is what it is. I'll show you how to run that gun, and hopefully you can run it and you can run it to your best of your ability. But if you can't, maybe you'll see the flaw, see the downfall, and you'll eventually stave and maybe go see Forrest over at Washington Street Pawn, and he can get you something a little bit better, maybe a little semi-auto or something. But you got to
Mhm.
start somewhere. Don't let the firearm that you have, even if it's a 9-shot 22 revolver, don't let that hold you back. Still get your permit, still carry, learn how to shoot it, defend yourself. That
I was going to say the numbers, though, overwhelmingly are that the crimes are being committed with handguns, and oftentimes it's because people simply the deaths that occur or a lot of the tragedies because people, I've seen these stories about drive-by shootings, for instance, and these aren't people who are aiming. They point this thing out the window sideways like they've seen in a movie, and they end up killing a 3-year-old by accident or something goes haywire and all of that. And yet the focus seems to be on long guns when it comes to controls. I don't know which one of you wants to reflect on that.
The funny thing is it's hard to shoot a handgun anyway. If you took most people out and gave them a target the size of a stop sign, they'd shoot that from across the street. Most people couldn't hit at one time. So now you add to that a little further distance from a moving vehicle. Yeah, there is no precision there. They're just spraying bullets. Um, as far as what Todd said about using different weapons, it doesn't matter what you're using to defend yourself as long as you hit the target. That's the most important thing. That's why taking a class and training is important, because you can defend yourself very well with a 22 caliber handgun as long as you can hit the target. And that's really what it boils down to, is training and learning what you need to know in that panic situation. So when the adrenaline's flowing and everything's going on, it's a no thought process. You can use that muscle memory and get target acquisition and do what you need to do. Um, I talked to another guy this week, came into my store. He teaches self defense with hand to hand or with knives. That's another thing to develop. Eric Herzog, my friend, and he teaches those classes, and it's a great opportunity for you if you don't have your gun available, if your gun gets knocked
Right.
out of your hand, if your gun malfunctions. Learn some other techniques
A
to defend
backup,
yourself.
if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Heck, get on a treadmill. If nothing else, you can outrun them.
Well, and all this goes hand in hand. Learn how to use a firearm to defend yourself. Learn hand to hand as a backup, and of course, to do all this and to be able to do it better, get in shape. Your body, you are the best weapon. Be able to put that handgun into play. Be able to go hand to hand without huffing and puffing 30 seconds in and not being able to finish.
We want to point out telephone number to reach the program 736-0300. And we have a caller with us this morning on Top Story, and you're on the air with Todd and Forrest. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Wonderful. What's on your mind?
Trying to find out from Todd how to sign up for his class, how long his waiting list is on his class, and just find out kind of the basics of the class.
Okay, I can start with that. The basics of the class is it's the Idaho Enhanced Concealed Carry Permit class. It's the state mandates that it's 8 hours long. You come to the class. We spend the first half of the day kind of in a classroom setting. We talk about Idaho lethal force law. That's taught to us by an Idaho law enforcement officer. We talk about different just basic gun safety. We talk about situational awareness. We talk about defensive mindset. We go to lunch. When we come back, the state requires that you fire 98 rounds. And we do that through just a series of simple drills. Just make sure we're all safe, make sure we understand how our gun functions and works. To sign up for the class, you can give me a call. My number is area code 620-794-6223. You can call me. You can text message me. I actually have a class. I'm getting set up for another class next month. I just don't have it actually scheduled yet. I'm waiting to hear back on a few people. I can get you on a list. We can get you in that class as soon as I get it scheduled. Just give me a call. Let me know.
Thank you.
Yep.
Want to thank him as well. And speaking of contact information for us, for people who'd like to touch base with you, you're on Facebook.
Facebook, Washington Street Pond. Stop by the store. Phone number 735-0012. We're putting pretty sizable orders in every day. It's been pretty tough to keep the counters full
I was
lately.
going to say, good time for Christmas shopping.
It is a great time, and there's some really good deals out there. Like I said, AR-15s right now, you can be under $640 out the door with taxes and everything for a brand new AR-15. There's great deals on those, and those are something that might be something that you want to buy as an investment, just because they've never been any cheaper than they are, And depending on which way this election goes, they could get a very valued commodity.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and for home defense, and we were talking about this, like why the gun grabbers are so after those type of weapons as opposed to handguns, even though handguns are used in more crimes. It basically boils down to, I think, just fear of the people. People aren't committing crimes with these guns, but you get a bunch of law-abiding citizens with weapons that you can actually defend yourself with, defend your home and your property. That scares them. They honestly don't want us to be able to do that. They would prefer being able to herd us around and tell us what to do and have no fear of of anything, you know. Once you're a sheep, you're a sheep. You know, people need to be wise. They need to make good decisions this election cycle. Find candidates who support, if Second Amendment rights are important to you, you need to find people that support that and vote it. And then take classes and train and know what you're doing. So if you ever have to use them to defend yourself or your home or your property, you're going to know what you're doing.
We have a caller with us. Caller, you're on the air with Forrest and Todd. Go ahead. You're on KLIX. Good morning.
Hi, I was wondering, is there a single handgun that you can rely on to defend yourself in grizzly country or cougar country?
Oh, good question.
If you're going to be hunting, you know, cougars are pretty elusive. I mean, there's very, very, very few run-ins with cougars. If you're hiking in grizzly country, you know, if you run into one, there's an opportunity to have an encounter. Um, I would, you know, you got to look at calibers when it comes to that. If you're defending yourself
I
against
just
large,
I mean self-defense, not hunting.
oh, okay, 9 millimeter. The ammo's cheap. It's used by all the NATO countries. The FBI just switched back to 9 millimeter. Most police forces are switching back to 9 millimeter. Statistics show that even trained professionals in a firefight connect with about 25% of their shots. So I always opt for magazine capacity. 9 millimeter has plenty of power to defend yourself against any human encounter, and you'll have you have a gun that holds 12 rounds as a 9 millimeter. It's going to hold 9 or 10 in a 40 and probably 8 in a 45 ACP. So if you take those numbers and do the math on that, you've got a much better chance of connecting with more rounds with a 9 millimeter. Less recoil, plenty of power to defend yourself, reliability, and the ammo is inexpensive.
Want to thank you for the call. We have a short break coming up. More of your telephone calls by the looks of things. There will be more. More of your telephone calls coming up too as well. Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense joining us in studio, as well as Forrest Anderson from Washington Street Pawn. We're talking firearms this morning, a top story as well with Bill Colley on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 48 at 9:20. We have a couple of guests in studio with us this morning, and on Fridays we talk firearms with of course Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense, and Forrest Anderson is joining us as well from Washington Street Pawn. We should point out you have a second shop too as well.
Yeah, we have Magic Valley Pawn on Addison. So, you know, both he's got a ton of stuff in there down at our sister store.
Yeah.
Like any kind of stuff, collectible stuff, TVs. He's got some crazy fun stuff. He's bought out a couple of states lately, and he has got a bunch of cool stuff. If you're looking for a really unique Christmas gift, come see either one of us. But he is loaded up with stuff right now, a ton of cool stuff right now.
We have a caller with us. And first of all, caller, we want to thank you for your patience. You're on the air on KLIX.
Hi, thank you. I have a question. Do you have someone or know someone in our general area that makes parts for guns, like a firing pin?
Well, yeah, you could bring it down to us at Washington Street Pawn. We have the best gunsmith in the valley.
Well, I'll have to call you then, because if I think it's the one you've mentioned before, and he said he could not. So, but I will call you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Or we can source some. I've got some sources for really old parts for really old guns. I'm sure we can get you taken care of.
Yeah, because a lot of people out there, collectors especially, need those.
Yeah.
So, want to thank you for the call. And you're up next. You're on the air on KLIX. Go ahead.
Bill, gentlemen, my wife got me a 9 millimeter for Christmas last year at Sportsman's Warehouse, and it has a 17-round clip. Is that legal?
Absolutely. State Idaho does not have a magazine capacity restriction, and 17 round magazines are very common nowadays. My gun I carry has a 21 round magazine.
I got one that carries a 19, so
So yeah, there is no magazine restriction in the state of Idaho. So as long as you keep it here, you'll be just
Thank
fine.
you very much.
Yep.
Want to thank you. We were just talking off air about states that have tried that and how it wasn't successful. In New York, under the communist governor there, Andrew Cuomo, they figured there were 700,000 people out there who were going to have to surrender magazines, and 700,000 people just ignored them. Uh, so that's how that can work. We have another caller. Caller, you're up next at 9:25 on KLIX. Go ahead.
Good morning.
Morning.
There's not a whole lot of ladies that call in about this, so I just thought I'd give a call in and say if there's any ladies out there listening that is still kind of tossing around the idea of whether or not they want to learn how to shoot, I would highly recommend Todd's class because I took it myself, and Todd does not ever make you feel stupid or unknowledgeable. He's just one of the greatest support teachers of handgun safety that I've ever met, and I just have to say it was a great experience. I learned far more than I thought that I was going to, even about the laws concerning carrying firearms. And once you're done with that class, you'll come out there with a lot more knowledge and wisdom and skill than you ever thought possible. And then I'd encourage you to continue training with the other skilled weapons trainers in the area. It was a great experience.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, I love having everyone in the class. I love having women in the class, people who might be intimidated by going somewhere else. I mean, come to me. I'm just a down-to-earth guy, and we'll do what we need to get you your permit, to help you learn, even if that means I stay after class after everyone leaves, and we keep shooting and do some more stuff. I'm okay with that.
Since we're getting a lot of calls today, both Forrest and Todd are going to be with us for the next half hour as well. We want to remind people, so you still have an opportunity. Just a couple of minutes left before our break here right now. We brought this up. It came up with one of the answers you were giving some of our callers, but I think it was the fellow who called and asked about, if he had to bring down a bear in self-defense or something like that. But people, when they're actually, we have to go back to this too. Different firearms for different people. I mean, that's still, we always got to stress that, because I picked up a revolver in a store one day and it must have weighed 6 pounds. It would not be easy to use that out in the field.
No, my firearm selection is hugely important in a self-defense situation. You need to find something that you're comfortable with, something that you enjoy shooting, because if you enjoy shooting, you will practice. And that's really the whole key to self-defense, is training and practice. And people get it twisted in their head like, well, I can't afford to be buying 1,000 rounds of ammunition a month. There's so much practice you can do in your own home, dry firing the gun with an empty gun. You can practice your reloads, you can practice your trigger manipulation. There's so many things you can do, but the beginning is firearm selection. Like that gentleman called about the bear. If you defend yourself against a person, that's a different situation than defending yourself against a bear. If you're going to go against a grizzly bear, you're going to want a 44 Magnum minimum, and go up from there. But you're going to want to have to practice with it, because you don't want to go buy a gun and some ammunition and then have a bear charging you. Your adrenaline will be going through the roof and then not be able to hit anything. It all comes down to shot placement. Can you hit the target with whatever you're defending yourself with?
We got to point out too, when a bear is the size of a small car, often, you've got to be accurate if you're.
Yeah, and in a panic situation, you think that's a huge target. They found guys with empty handguns, and they found a bear later, and it doesn't have a single bullet wound in it.
Yeah.
You have to realize, they say in a panic situation, your worst day on the range will be better than your best day in a self-defense situation.
We've got more coming up. Todd Eccles and Forrest Anderson joining us in studio. We're talking about firearms, and if you have a comment or question for these fellows, better to address it to them when it comes to firearms than me. It's 736-0300. At 9:30, we have 48. Our guests this morning are talking firearms, and of course, you can reach our program, News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com. It's top story. Telephone number is 736-0300. Just a quick reminder. Sometime probably shortly after Election Day, we're going to be joined in studio by Dr. Eric F. Jones. He's not too far away from here with his office. He uses a holistic, systemic approach to wellness. In other words, very traditional remedies. Been doing it for nearly a quarter century with master's and doctoral degrees in marriage and family therapy. Dr. Eric F. Jones uses methods of alternative healing, naturopathy, medicinal herbs, nutrition, sound waves, intellectual cognitive self-regulation, and napathy. These help remedy and manage mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual challenges. He's currently accepting new patients. He has evening and Saturday appointments available. Telephone number 731-7178, and he's on Facebook. Eric F. Jones, Ph.D., mental health and wellness therapist. That's Eric with a C. I have another caller joining us, and of course, once more, that number, 736-0300. Forrest Anderson from Washington Street Pond, Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense, and of course me, Bill Colley, answering the telephones. And you're up next. Go ahead.
Hi, I have a question for you.
Sure, go ahead.
I was wondering, what about pistols? I've seen them on different places on a belt buckle. They're a little 22. I think hold about 4 or 5 rounds. What would you suggest something like that as a concealed carry / open carry firearm piece?
Yeah, they make them in 22 long rifle. They make them in 22 Magnum. They're actually really reliable little guns. I think they're made by NAA. And we've sold them. I don't like the release mechanism on them. I don't like anything that if it gets bumped in the wrong situation, it could fall out. We've actually talked to people who have looked at their belt buckle and their belt buckle's there and their gun's not sitting in it anymore. So it's one of those things that, if you get a good mechanism, however you're comfortable carrying, I don't think anyone would be, as long as the gun is in a safe situation and it's not going to accidentally fire, and as long as you know how to manipulate the mechanism to draw it and use it when you need to, I don't have a problem with that.
I don't see a problem with it at all either. I mean, if you're confident in it and it's not going to fall out, you don't want to be dropping it, in town somewhere, obviously. As long as you're confident in it and it works, I mean, that's good with me. You could also just get a little Derringer and put it in your pocket too. That way it's not going to necessarily fall out. So it's something else to think about.
Want to say thank you. And we have another caller with us. Caller, you're on the air on KLIX.
Hello?
Go ahead, sir. You're on the air.
Hi. I just had a question for Todd. I know that a caller earlier had asked how to get a hold of him, and he spit off the telephone number a little too quick. So I was curious if I could get his telephone number, and then if we needed to have our own firearm before we signed up for his class.
Yeah, okay. The phone number again says area code 620-794-6223. You can call me, you can text me. As far as the class, what you need for the class, and I'll tell you what you need, and then I'll tell you what I can do. What you need for the class is obviously eye protection and ear protection. You'll need a handgun, and the range I use, they don't allow any Magnum calibers. So if you got a .357 revolver, just get some 38s for it. And you need 100 rounds because the state requires that you fire 98 rounds. And then I've got a little contest that we do. We burn up the last 2 rounds. If you do not have your own handgun, I actually have some that I let you borrow for the class at no charge. It's all 9mm, so you have to bring just 100 rounds of 9mm target ammo. I'll bring my 9mm handguns. We'll find one that fits you, and you're more than welcome to use that during the class.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
No problem.
And then we'll send you over to see Forrest, and he'll outfit you with the rest.
Exactly.
Yeah, 9mm is a great deal right now. I think we have it at $13 a box for brand new brass case stuff. So yeah, if you're going to take one of these classes, come see us. We've got a bunch in stock right now.
We want to point out we're going to squeeze a caller in here. We may not have time in the last minute of this segment to give you the answer, but we'll at least allow the caller to get the question or comment out. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air on KLIX. Go ahead.
Hi. I've taught firearm safety for a lot of years, and one thing I found out that a man takes his wife into the store, buys her a cute little .380 to fit in her purse or something, and like the little Ruger and Smith & Wesson, they go to the range, and there's not enough grip to hold on to, and their hands get sore, and then they thinking about divorcing the guy. You might bring that up, that get a gun that fits you, and if you don't have the little caliber, get more of a medium-sized one.
In fact, we'll get to that in the next segment of the program. We've got about 20 minutes left. Of course, we've got Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense and Forrest Anderson from Washington Street Pond in studio with me, Bill Colley on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 50. Finally reached 50 this morning at 9:40. We had a caller just before the break, and the caller brought up an interesting point that both our studio guests were talking about during the last few minutes. I want to point out, of course, Todd Eccles is with Patriot Defense, and Forrest Anderson with Washington Street Pond, which is just a few blocks away from our studios. And the caller, Bill Colley, with you too as well on KLIX, and it's 9:44 and 49. Caller brought up the fact, mentioning, that he was concerned about women because generally, on average, they're going to have smaller hands and the like. But the two of you had a conversation about this, and it really still comes back, I guess, to the individual and how that individual can handle it.
It does. We've talked about this on the show before. A lot of guys think, I have the cutest little girlfriend. I'm going to get her the cutest little gun. But she's never going to carry it. We're going to keep it in the nightstand, or we're going to just keep it in the house for defense. In that case, that's not the right gun for that application. You buy the firearm. The firearm is just a tool. You buy the right firearm for the right application. You buy one that fits your hand. If you're going to carry that gun every day, if she's going to, you're going to want a light, small gun, but it's for that application of carrying. If you're going to go out to the range and train, and you should train with the gun you're carrying, obviously, so you know the controls. If you're going to be doing a lot of practice, buy a bigger gun. If you're not going to carry it every day, the mistake a lot of people make is they buy a huge gun and they want to carry every day, and after 3 days, they're like, I can't carry this gun. It's pulling my pants down. It's just too heavy. The other problem is people buy a little tiny gun and then they want to go shoot at the range all the time, and after about 50 rounds, they're like, man, this thing is snappy and no fun, and it's hard to be really super accurate, as my friend with a full size. That's because the longer barrel, bigger grip translates into better accuracy.
When you go to, like you pointed out, it seems like it's one extreme to the next. Too big a gun to carry, too small a gun to shoot. So if you want to carry a small gun, that's fine. And obviously, like Forrest said, you need to train with the small gun that you're going to carry. But if you're just starting out and you're learning the basics and you don't want to develop these training scars like bad flinch and recoil shy and all this stuff, get a good larger gun, a bigger gun. That doesn't mean a bigger caliber, just a bigger frame gun, one that's going to suck up some of that recoil. Learn the trigger control with that, learn the grip, learn the stance, learn how to hit what you're shooting at, and then get that little one out and shoot it. I have a lot of women, or people, period, not even just women, not picking on the women, but come in with a little tiny gun. They go to shoot it. They're like 5 rounds in, and they're all over the place. And I look at them, and I go, do you got another 90 rounds in you? And they'll look at me, and they're like, I got to shoot this another 90 rounds? I'm like, yeah, why don't you look at my firearms over here? Why don't we let you use one of those? Then you can practice with it, learn the basics, and then move on to a smaller gun. It's just a lot easier that way.
We have another caller looking to join us. Caller, you're going to be next. You're on the air on KLIX. Go ahead.
I'd like to add a safety bit. Make sure your barrel is clear. Like if you're out in the field, you don't have any snow or dirt in there. But check the barrels, otherwise you're going to get a horrific blowback.
Good point.
Oh yeah, I mean, anytime you're out in the field, especially if you're hunting or range or whatever, you want to make sure that barrel's clear. If you've been hiking around with your rifle all day, or if you've been out duck hunting with your shotgun and maybe you've fallen down, it's you leaned it up against somewhere and it's fallen in the mud, or it's been in the bottom of the boat or whatever. Clear the gun, make sure it's unloaded, and make sure that barrel's clear. Because bad things can happen. You pull the trigger and there's a blockage.
Squibs are a problem too with handguns. There's a lot of bad ammunition out there. Unfortunately, there's a lot of not that remanufactured ammunition is bad. We bought a lot from Montana. I shot 30,000 rounds of it and didn't have a bad one. But there are some very small manufacturers out there who will give you what they call a squib load, in that you'll fire the bullet and it won't clear the barrel. If you ever feel like a really soft shot, always unload that gun and check for a squib. Make sure your bore is clear. Same thing when you're hunting. We just had a shotgun come in the shop the other day. The barrel was bulged because they had been hunting and at some point stuck it in the mud, and they shot the next round and it didn't break the barrel, but it put a bulge in the barrel. So that pressure has to go somewhere. And if it can't get out the end and it can't get out the back, it's going to go out the side of the barrel. So it's always a good thing is to always make sure that the muzzle of that gun is clear.
We have another caller. It's 9:48, and you're on the air with Forrest and Todd. Caller, go ahead. All right, caller, we'll offer you an opportunity to call back. 736-0300, 736-0300. Just a quick note, and I meant to mention this earlier. The caller mentioned, issues with holstering your pistol or your revolver. This my own memory when I was a kid, and my dad had a service revolver, and of course he had he snapped shut, of course, over that, kept it nice and tight. Guys in the military, the old timers always had a big holster that, almost sealed the entire firearm while they were holding it, or kept it on their side. But if you're out in the woods a lot, and say you're hiking or something, that's where if you just obviously if you're in an urban environment, you need quickness. Just that I've seen a lot of these holsters that have been manufactured here locally. They're great for that. But if you're out there and you're roughing it a little bit, you're going to need something a bit more secure.
Yeah, and you can still buy the old flap style holsters. Like there was a reason why they had a flap over the top. These guys are crawling around in the mud and the sand and the dirt, and you've got to keep as much of that out of your gun. If you want it to be reliable, you've got to keep it as clean as possible. Most of the broken, I use that with air quotes, guns that we get into my shop are just dirty. One thing I would tell you at Washington Street Pawn, if you've bought a gun, there's so many people will sell you a gun and there's no support after the sale. You buy it from a box store, I don't care where you bought your gun. We want you to be safe and we want that gun to be reliable. So if you've bought a gun and you're not comfortable cleaning it, or you don't know how to take it apart, you don't know how to clean it, bring it in. We'll clean it for you for free. We'll have you stand right there and we'll show you how to take it apart. We'll show you how to clean it, no charge. We want you to know what you're doing. We want you to be proficient with that. And we want you to have a clean gun, and we want you to have the knowledge that when you get home after a day of shooting, you'll be able to take it apart yourself and clean it. The woman that called earlier said she'd taken Todd's class, had a great experience there at Patriot Defense. That is the biggest growing segment of the firearms community now is women, because it puts them on a level playing field. And let's face it, I'm sure Todd's experienced with this. After they take a couple classes, generally they're better shooters than men because they haven't come into it with a lot of bad habits. If you've been shooting the wrong way for 40 years, like men do, usually they've been shooting. My grandpa showed me how to shoot, and it was incorrect, but they've been shooting. To break those habits is hard. Most women haven't handled firearms, so they come in, you teach them the right way. Women are smarter anyway, I'll just admit it. They shoot the right way the first time, and they learn correctly, they listen, and they're good. But a lot of them don't know how to clean that gun. They're intimidated by that. Bring it in. We'll show you how to do it, and then you'll be confident with that gun.
Someone taught my sister how to bowl when she was a teenager, and she ended up becoming one of the top-ranked bowlers in the state because she didn't have the bad habits a lot of us picked up just going down to the lanes on our own on weekends when we were younger. And after I went bowling with her a few times, and she was routinely bowling 220 or more, I just said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I just didn't want that to be embarrassed by bowling with my sister. We have a caller with us. It's 9:52. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air with Todd and Forrest. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm so confused about different types of ammo and what ammunition is compatible with others, and what's the most common ammunition buy so you can get supply in time of need. It's just so confusing.
Are we talking handguns or rifles?
Both.
Yeah, I'd just say just come down to the store. Let us know the calibers that you've got, what the application is. Everything's got a different purpose. If you're shooting large, dangerous game, you're going to want a bullet that penetrates. You're going to want a bullet that will drive deep into that animal. If you're defending yourself in your home, you're going to want a bullet that will drop all of its energy in the target and not carry through. You don't want to be shooting a .357 with solid bullets in your home for self-defense, because if you miss, or even if you hit the target, it'll travel through the target, through a wall, could kill your neighbor next door or your kids in the next room. So you want to shoot something that if it hits a sheetrock wall or it hits the intruder, the bullet's going to stop right there. So there's no secondary threat.
Well, no, all calibers, like say a 38 caliber has different chambers, so all 38 caliber ammunition is not compatible. Is that correct?
Well, it's not. If you have a 357, you can shoot 357 Magnum, and you can shoot 38 Special through that. If you have a 454 Casull, you can shoot 454 Casull. You can shoot 45 Long Colt, and you can even shoot 45 shorts out of that. 44 Magnum, you can shoot 44 Magnum, 44 Special. Generally, with semi-automatic guns, the caliber that's stamped on the gun, that's all you can shoot. We had someone call the other day that where they had bought the gun and told them they could shoot 9mm and 380 out of that gun, which is just a disaster waiting to happen. If it's stamped 9mm, that's what you shoot out of the gun. Some of the wheel guns you can shoot, or revolvers, you can shoot multiple calibers through.
I want to thank you for the call. I have a quick point, and I'll make this. When I took driver's ed in high school, they taught us how to touch the gas pedal, the brake pedal, how to steer, and I think it was 10 and 2 we used to use at the time, or 10 and 5. Some of these directions have changed, obviously, since the ancient days, right? But I got home, and I remember after going through the course, and I passed it, and my dad says, "Did they teach you how to change the oil?" No. He said, "Well, did they teach you to check the radiator now and then?" No. In other words, I got all of the basics down, steering, braking, accelerator, turning left, right, and everything else, but I didn't know how to maintain what I was doing. And when you go train, I guess that's the next question. We can teach people how to, get that muscle memory and everything else. But we've been talking a little bit this morning about people who sometimes come in with a filthy firearm and they have issues related to that. That's got to be an important part of this, because a lot of novices just simply don't know how they're going to clean that firearm.
Reliability is key. Doesn't matter what you've got in your hand for a firearm. If it's not going to go bang when you pull the trigger, then you just as well have a hammer or something or a rock, something you can throw, because that's what it basically becomes, is a chunk of metal at that point. So you should always keep your firearm clean. I'm crazy about that. Every time I go out and shoot, I've got a pile of parts laying on my counter the next day cleaning that gun. So
Unfortunately, I'm not as good as Forrest, and I preach that they need to be cleaned, but I'm not a big fan of cleaning them. I do clean them, don't get me wrong. The other night, my son and my daughter shoot trap and skeet. My 11-year-old son just started this year. Brand new semi-automatic shotgun. He'd been out shot it a couple times. He was on the line. He starts shooting it, and the sucker's not ejecting the shells. And he turned around and gave me the dirtiest look. Like, are you going to maintain this thing? At least show me how to do it. So, yeah, no, it's very, very important to clean them. Like I said, your life depends on the one that you've got with you, the one that the one that you're going to carry. I'd hate to draw that gun, have to use it to defend yourself or your family, and go to pull the trigger and nothing's there.
Bill, I want to mention something while we're talking about trap shooting. The Murtaugh Boy Scouts on November 5th, Saturday, a week from this Saturday, are doing a trap shoot fundraiser. So we're donating a lot of good stuff to it. We'll have a PS4, maybe a gun or two. It is a great shoot. It's a great family shoot. The suits are cheap. They're usually $5 a piece. There's lots of kid prizes, lots of adult prizes. They do anti-Oakleys. They do everything. They do it on the south side of Murtaugh Lake. You can't miss it. Just go to the gun shots. And it's a great time, and it's for a great cause. So if you're a firearms enthusiast, if you like to shoot shotguns, it's a great place to come shoot. They have a bunch of great prizes, great food. All the local families out there cook cinnamon rolls and chili and all the good stuff. You should really come out and check it out if you're out there, because the money's going to a great cause. It's going to the Boy Scouts out there, and it's a tradition. We've been doing it out there for 20 some years, and it's a really good time.
A week from tomorrow.
A week from tomorrow, November 5th at Murtaugh Lake. It's fabulous.
I want to thank the two of you for coming by again. Quick hour, it just flows by. Forrest Anderson and Todd Eccles joining me in studio. Forrest from Washington Street Pawn, Todd from Patriot Defense. And God willing, the creek don't rise, I get to do this all over again Monday morning between 8 and 10 o'clock. And we'll talk to these two men next week as well here on News Radio 1310 KLIX.